people who turned out to be the best philosophers were always those ones who had apprenticeshiped with another great philosopher before them. And that philosopher had just absolutely crushed this person, and you need to be like this, you need to be like that. And it's very similar within the musical community in that, and especially within jazz, as I'm sure you can attest to, like, we look to our musical mentors above us and we really try to get as close to them as possible so that we can get something from them, so take something from them and learn from them. And oftentimes, if you jump in a jam session at a jazz bar and there's some really incredible jazz musicians who are playing on that stage, they will do everything that they can to crush your spirit and show you that you're not scared enough, right? That you don't know enough and you should be scared and you should be looking to constantly improve, because if you don't, then you're not respecting the art form of music, right? How important is it, that element of, I don't want to say crushing your soul, but that element of showing younger people below you and receiving from your mentors that crushing advice that you need to focus more. You need to be more scared. You need to do better because you're respecting the art like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's how Charlie Parker became Charlie Parker, right? At least the story as I heard it is he went up on a stage and played, and I forget who it was, but someone threw a cymbal at his head, right? And almost took his head off.
Yeah.
And
jazz is full of those kinds of stories.
Oh, yeah.
Jazz musicians are brutal.
Yeah, and that's what the movie Whiplash is all about. Yeah. Right? And he had a chair thrown at his head in a scene. And Charlie Parker then was so destroyed and so devastated that he went home, and all of that shame and embarrassment and anger and whatever it is, that cocktail that he was experiencing, that drove him to practice his ass off every day and to become one of the greatest saxophonists of all time. And he, story goes, he shows up a year later and he plays, and then he's playing one of the most amazing solos of all time, right? So, and other people talk about this, and I think it's true that there's a kind of when you're angry and your soul wants to kind of resist being crushed, that can be amazing fuel for development. And to be honest, it's something that I've avoided. I very much, I'll just admit, I did not go through that soul crushing experience and work hard enough to become, if there's a jam session going on, I'm not going to stand up. It's like the last time I did that, I'm still gnawing with the bitter shame of how much my chops have gone down over the years. And I just was not hanging at all. And I could just feel the ire from the other musicians. And it's a very competitive thing, but you can use that. And I think that that's a really valid way for people to find, it's grist for the mill if one chooses to apply it. And I think that it can really reveal to people where they truly are in their capacity to chew through discomfort to try to achieve something greater, to try to achieve something that there's no other way to get it except to go through discomfort. And I've found my own ways of pulling myself through those kind of fields of discomfort, but it's not in becoming a jazz master of, or just even really able to hang. I chose to kind of have the safety of my studio. And I get challenged, in plenty of ways all the time. But if you would have asked me when I was 20, I would have said like, you don't need any of that. And I mean, it just depends on how long you maintain that before it's a matter of time that you kind of get smacked in the face by just the reality that you haven't done the work, you haven't developed your skills. And it's not that you can't, it's just a matter of what's your stomach for it. How long can you delay gratification? How much can you just show up and put the work in and trust that doing that is going to take you somewhere? And coming back to what I think your first question was, there is an established body of knowledge, and to show up on a stage and be and have the hubris to just sass around and do your thing without really having any knowledge or control over the craft, it can be an embarrassment. That being said, some of the most popular artists of all time are not trained musicians, or they're self-taught. I mean, Bob Dylan. There's a lot of folk musicians and the people in other areas. Jazz and classical music are kind of, they're a bit more under lock and key, and you have to put in a lot of work to be able to hang. But I mean, there's voices in folk music or pop music that have arguably had a way more massive impact. So there's examples of people that maybe didn't go through a formal training process, and yet they've had an impact on the culture. And has a jazz musician or a classical musician that has spent their entire lives getting a degree of proficiency in their craft, do they have an impact on culture? So there's multiple ways of viewing it, and viewing what it is that you actually want to achieve, where you want to put your time and where you want to put your energy, and how you want to be impacted by your pursuit and how you might want to impact others through your pursuit. So I don't think it's simple, but definitely with jazz and classical music, there's a canon, and it's guarded, and the people that are in there have fought their own battles and worked very hard to be able to do what they get to do. So I understand the ire that's aroused when someone who can't hang wants to get up and be on the stage. It's just like, look, you haven't earned it. You haven't earned it. Look at what the rest of us had to do. So, there's when people work for me, and I try to mentor people that assist me or whatever, I do try to impress upon them the general sense of delayed gratification and being willing to do whatever it takes to get the job done. Always bring your A game. Push yourself to have a vision about something. I think it's in more of a conceptual way, rather than saying, you need to be able to do, 8 species counterpoint exercises forwards and backwards, and those kind of regular metrics. I think those would apply more if you were a composition student or if you were in academia. But we live in a world where technology provides access for people that may or may not have kind of earned the right to wield them in the way that they do. And look, it just unashamedly, I'm more in that camp than I am in the learned camp. And I won't hide that. It's not that I'm not ashamed about it. It's not that I'm not looking to improve upon it, but I'm willing to admit that I am more in that camp. And I think that the older I get, the more I do wish that I would have spent more of my young years delaying the gratification and really honing the skills and sitting at the feet of the masters and studying them on much deeper levels and chewing that and absorbing that into my system because I think that whatever I then wanted to turn around and say as an artist would be that much more powerful. But that is a viewpoint that I've evolved to, not one that I started out with.